Hello and welcome to Beyond the Boundary. This is round 19, news and views. We've got plenty to get through on this episode. I've got Nick to my right, as always. How are you, Nick?
I'm pretty good, Josh. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'll talk about the tips later, but anyway. And today, on my left, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, mate. I've got a bit of the sniffle, so I hope I'm not sniffing through the show, but got an exciting news and views ahead of us.
Thanks for warning. I'm sitting right next to you, and you tell me that.
Well, that was my plan, actually.
Boys,
Some
huge topics this week, but first, let's get into the ladder. Sydney have just held on to top spot.
Yeah, Ben McGlynn's last goal kept them on top spot against
what.
Hawthorn.
So. I thought that was great, actually, watching this, watching the game live and, seeing the live ladder as every goal, changed the positions around there.
Absolutely, but obviously we go down to the bottom half of the 8 and there's a new team in there in Adelaide.
Adelaide has snuck in, swap spots with Collingwood there. Huge ramifications that game obviously is going to have.
Is the final 8 set?
I don't want to call that it's set, but Adelaide is definitely looking like the better team there now. Yeah.
I can't see Collingwood in current form at the moment making the top 8.
They've lost 4 of their last 5, is it?
5 of the last 6.
5 of the last 6, wow. Yeah.
So,
I think they've got some tough games coming up as well.
They've got Port Adelaide this week. They've got Hawthorn in round 23, and then West Coast at Patterson Stadium, which West Coast aren't travelling that well.
Yeah.
However, travelling to Perth is never easy.
No, of course not.
So they've got some big challenges.
Gold Coast, we're going to talk about them in depth a little bit later, but now they've slipped down to 10th spot. Going to be very tough for them from here on out.
A game behind as well, but as percentage as well. I mean, their percentage is under 100, and to get in the finals, you probably needed to be about around 108, 109 to get into that.
I'd be forgetting all of that if I was Gold Coast. I'd be forgetting finals in the sense that would not be the number one thing I'd focus on. They had, I think, 32 disposals to 120 or something in one quarter. And it took them, I think, a record 15 minutes to register a mark.
Anyway, we will talk about that.
But finals is the last thing they should be worrying about.
Absolutely.
And then West Coast and Richmond, 11th and 12th there, they're not going to make it. They're out of the race now.
Yep. And Brisbane had a very good win against the Gold Coast Suns. They got themselves up to 15th position, so that's fantastic to see.
Probably a sneaky chance to get themselves out of the bottom 4 now, you'd think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got Melbourne this week, and we'll go into it on Beyond the Boundary, but Melbourne's record isn't that great at Etihad Stadium, so massive opportunity to get out of the bottom 4.
Definitely. Moving on to the Coleman medal, it's still Schultz in the lead on 52, Franklin's on 50, and Tom Hawkins on 48 there.
I think Buddy will get him. I think Buddy will get Schultz. Bud loves playing the Bombers.
He's coming up against the Bombers, isn't he?
You
can book it now.
We'll go into that and Beyond the Boundary. Make sure you check that out. But loves playing the Bombers, and I reckon he might be in front by the end of this week.
I think it's going to be a very exciting finish to the Coleman medal because these 3 players are from teams that have such vital games coming up. Port Adelaide's still a chance to sneak into the top 4. They want to hang on to a home final. Sydney want to hang on to top spot, so Lance Franklin needs to perform there. And of course, with Geelong, you've got Tom Hawkins. Geelong want to finish top 2, so Tom Hawkins needs to perform there as well.
Absolutely.
First topic of the week, it's the one everyone's been talking about. It's Tyrone Vickery. Dean Cox, he's a retiring player at his home ground. The whole crowd is, they're there for Coxie. The banner has Coxie on it. Everything's about Coxie. And Vickery has just picked the wrong player to whack.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. You couldn't pick a worse bloke to hit. Let me just say off the record that Vickery was provoked.
Yeah.
Cox did elbow him in the guts, and he did get winded. But Vickery's got to be smarter than that. He's got to be absolutely smarter. I mean, this is the second time in 2 months that he's been suspended. And it's just not good enough. And it was a weak act.
I think provocation is a very weak defence in footy in general. To do anything against the rules saying that I was provoked does not really hold up well in the AFL because it's such a rough sport. It's such a physical sport that almost anything could be deemed provocation. If you were a victim of a hard tackle, you might say I was provoked. He tackled me harder than he should have. You know what I mean? But there's no rule guide on how hard you should and shouldn't tackle. Yeah. So I think, an elbow to the stomach, yes, it's untoward. It's not quite, within the rules. But it's AFL. You see a lot of players, niggle each other, push each other around.
You see those elbows every week. I mean, Cox may have had a little bit more force in his.
Yeah.
But you see it each and every week.
Oh, of course. And I definitely don't think it warrants, punching the guy across the face. No. Yeah, I mean, he had to be subbed out, and he's going through luckily, he's got no structural damage, but lucky for Vickery.
Lucky for Vickery as well, because if he had a broken jaw, and I'm very strong that I don't think Vickery will play again this year. Well, I don't think he should.
Yep.
I mean, he's been referred straight to the tribunal.
So you're saying 5 weeks?
5 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Vinay?
I would probably say about that, maybe 4 or 5 weeks.
I mean, did Brent Staker have his broad jaw broken by Barry Hall.
That's a bit far back for me.
Brent Staker was knocked out. Cox was not knocked out, no.
That was
very dazed.
Cox had a grade 2 concussion, which is just the one level below a grade 3. Grade 3 concussion is when you're knocked out and you're not actually able to get off the ground yourself. Cox was able to walk off the ground himself.
I think Brent Staker is an unfair comparison here.
Because that was a king hit. That was a punch straight.
That was a punch. Yeah. That was a closed fist, swinging
bang
around like that.
Yeah.
This is sort of more of a...
swinging roundhouse.
Yeah, which is what I want to get into here. That I think Vickery, obviously, he should be condemned for what he's done. It's not the right thing to do. But I think there's two big factors here which have been, sort of trialed by media, and Vickery's been made out to be a little bit worse than perhaps what it actually was. The first one is that, he hasn't gone to punch him in the face. This act that he's done is, it's part of the aggression in the ruck contest. Obviously, he's not trying to get him in the face. He knows the consequences of getting someone in the face. He's tried to, hit him really hard, but he's, done it a little bit high. He's got him in the face. That's the first thing there. He's not trying to knock the guy out. The second thing is, the fact that it's Dean Cox, I think, should be separated from the issue here.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It shouldn't really matter whether it was Dean Cox or whether it was Ash Smith.
There's been sort of an emotional attachment to this issue that it's, he's picked the wrong player. It's Cox's, retirement sort of send-off game.
Well, of course, the media likes to dress that up, don't they? They like to dress up the fact that Vickery's not only hit an AFL player, but he's hit Dean Cox, the hero of the West Coast Eagles Football Club. He's put him down onto the ground and all that kind of stuff. So, I definitely agree with Nick there. They should look at it in the scope of the fact that he's hit another player.
In no way should that... And that's why this has been made out to be worse than it is. Mm-hmm. I don't think... I just sort of feel if this was a different week with two different players, neither of them were retiring, I think this would have been looked on a little bit more lightly.
Yep. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that sentiment. I mean, whoever is hit shouldn't be put in the spotlight. Just because it's Dean Cox doesn't mean he gets more weeks or whatever.
Exactly. I agree.
I mean, you give the amount of weeks on the merit of the charge.
Yeah, and I think since the incident, they've handled it very well. Damien Hardwick has said, we like our players to be rough. Now, obviously, they know the rules. He wasn't trying to knock him out, but, he's just trying to rough him up into the contest after he's been roughed up just before. And then Vickery's come out on his own merit and apologised and said, obviously, I'm not trying to hurt the guy. I apologise to him and his family. I think he's handled it well since then. Neil Coppy's punishment. Whether it's 3, whether it's 5 weeks, you never know.
Before we move on to our next topic, boys, one other thing I didn't like in that game was the supporters coming over towards Vickery on the bench.
And especially one particular supporter, he got on TV twice doing the same thing. He made his way to the race, specifically to the Richmond race, so he could have a go at him again after he's just banged on the roof of the interchange bench. I thought he was out of line there.
Absolutely, and probably should have been thrown out. You don't approach players like that.
It's very dangerous. First of all, from a legal perspective, that is assault.
Yeah.
Putting someone in the fear of imminent physical harm or anything like that. The thing is, even being touched could constitute assault.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So Vickery, if he may have genuinely felt as though, this guy's gonna, because who knows, that guy could have been drunk. He could have been.
And it was just last week there was an incident in a local league where a supporter's done this over the fence, and then the player has pushed him and he's got suspended
in the sandful.
Yeah, he's got suspended for however many weeks. So you don't like to see that.
However, I didn't like Vickery responding either.
I thought that was very average.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Vickery, he was when he got drafted, he seemed like a very good story. He came from a very good school, very good competition. He was a very smart kind of guy, but he's making a lot of poor decisions. And we spoke about how earlier in the year he's only just hanging on in that side.
Yeah.
And
there's one thing I forgot to mention that I didn't like from Vickery actually. What he did at the end of the game, he's sort of gone to a young supporter and sort of pretended he was going to give the ball to a West Coast fan, and then he's sort of taken the ball away and given it to someone else. And I think when you...
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
But it was like... I think he might have maybe not noticed it was a West Coast fan and he was about to give the ball to or whatever. But on the footage, it just sort of looked really bad. Like, he's sort of done this terrible incident. He should be keeping his head down.
Well, I'm sure he didn't mean it deliberately.
I don't know. It looked really bad, though. I'm sure he didn't do that on purpose.
So moving on, gentlemen, from the Vickery Cox issue, which will be decided by the tribunal. I hear that you two had a row over one James Podsiadly on the weekend. Now, for those of you out there, let me set the scene before these two rip each other to shreds.
Just one thing, we cannot show footage of it due to our agreement.
I might get a picture of it.
Yeah, we might put a picture in, but unfortunately we can't show footage of the incident due to our agreement, but go ahead.
So basically, let me set the scene for you. I don't even need a picture. That's how beautiful my meta language can be. But anyway, so basically James Podsiadly's taken a mark. He's on about 10 to 15 metres out on an angle. He's on an angle.
45-degree angle.
It's not a definite drop punt. It's not a definite snap. So, it's the grey area. So He's decided to go to snap, and he has absolutely shanked it.
Up in the sky, out on the
It's
full.
out of the
See you
full. It was
later.
just one of the most awful
Game on the
snaps.
line.
It was. Yeah, in that situation, it was just.
It was
the
a
worst
very
possible
important
outcome.
kick, yeah.
Yeah. So Josh here feels that it was stupid of him to go for the snap. He should have just gone back and gone the traditional drop punt. So he's our Jason Dunstall in this argument.
12.54, yeah, I'll say that.
And Nick, our man over there, feels that he's entitled to go for the snap. It wasn't a bad decision. He
I think
just
I'm
needed
the
to execute
Steve.
it
I
better.
think I'm the Steve Johnson of the argument. I'll take the North.
There you go. So it's Stevie J versus Jason Dunstall.
I'll take 5.
Off you go, gentlemen.
I might kick us off. James Podsiadly, he's taken this mark. He's come from Geelong, where he's been very close to Steve Johnson there. I've seen Steve Johnson 30 metres out directly in front decide to kick around the body as opposed to the drop punt from a set shot.
Yep.
I've seen him miss this kick too. But it's the kick he feels comfortable with because, obviously with the drop punt, you just can't get it down pat. He feels comfortable with the snap. James Podsiadly obviously has picked up that. He's in this position, sure, it's not definitely a snap, it's not definitely a drop punt, but it's in a position where you would consider kicking around the body. If he feels confident in that position to get more of the ball on the boot, as they say you do, kicking around the body like that, I think he should go with that. He's the one that's had his hundreds or thousands of kicks at training. He's tried the drop punt, he's tried the snap. He knows this is the percentage kick for him, the one he feels confident he's more likely to kick. In this instance, it's that 1 out of 10 that he's stuffed up. But 9 times out of 10, I think he would be the better chance to kick a goal with a snap than he would with the drop punt.
Alrighty,
Which sometimes you can see fade early, brush the post, whatever.
All right, so that's Geison's argument. Now returning fire will be our man Dunstall here.
Well, the thing is, with Podsiadly alone, I've seen a number of times him actually fluff that kick
Okay.
in games.
Okay.
Podsiadly specifically.
Podsiadly specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I struggle with that word. Don't make me say it ever again. But I've seen him fluff that kick a number of times.
Okay. So,
So-
he's not a Stevie Milne or anything like that.
No, he's not. He's not a Steve Johnson. He's not a Steve.
Yes,
Young.
okay.
He's a 194 key position forward.
That's
Okay. That he's paid to kick the goals.
Yes.
Now he has kicked some. I'll grant that.
Yep.
Okay. But game on the line. I think they were a goal up at the time, and Collingwood were pressing hard. Why not? I just don't understand why you kick through the ball and back yourself to kick it straight through the middle rather than that miscuing that kick.
I think it's the angle. It's one of those situations where the player is so concentrated on, just because it's on a little bit of an angle, they're so concentrated on trying to chip it through so that they can get it perfectly straight that they're more likely to actually overthink it and, just hook it a little bit. Whereas the snap is sort of from that angle, it's more of a natural thing that, you don't have to overthink it, It's
think-
just the natural action to hook it around that way.
Personally, for me, I think you're increasing the difficulty of the shot.
But
Because
it would
you
change
don't-
with the player.
It would, but you've got to strike the ball perfectly. With the snap, it can go anywhere, as we saw. Drop
Alright.
punt, you can float one through and it can still
what
go
I'm,
straight.
what I'm going to summarise this debate is that what I can take from Nick's argument is that, yes, he practices this shot a lot. And obviously, it should be down to the player to evaluate the situation and work it out and do what they do. So I think I take Nick's point that the execution is at fault, not the decision. But then I also take Josh's point that a lot less can go wrong with a drop punt. It's much less likely to go out on the full. It's much less likely to balloon off in some disgusting fashion, as we saw.
I'd say it's much less likely to go out on the full, but it's just as likely to sort of fade and be a behind.
Okay.
Not from that far out.
All right, boys.
Not
This
from that far out.
is gonna keep
We could
going.
probably
He'd
talk about
for a
this all
long
day.
He'd
time,
have
so-
to absolutely screw it off the boot, kick an absolute mong,
A pearl, are you saying?
a perler, to fluff that kick.
Okay.
Anyway, we
Well,
can
boys,
argue about this
moving
all
on
day.
from that debate, obviously you, the viewer, should drop your opinion on this.
Lucky for Pods, Adelaide won the game.
Exactly that. Because, I'll tell you what, just quickly, if you had to kick the goal, I would have had no problem. But that's the risk you take.
But this is
It
where
would have been interesting if they drew.
But this is where I find the problem with the argument, because you think it's the wrong decision, but you wouldn't have had a problem if he'd got it. You would then not think it's the wrong decision if he got
I
it.
still think it was the wrong decision, but I wouldn't be making a fuss over it because he kicked the goal.
Boys, I'm going to have to pull the curtain on this debate, and I'm going to open the curtain, and we're going to start talking about the Gold Coast
The
Suns.
Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah, boys. I mean, I've been a strong advocate for the Gold Coast Suns since the start of the year.
Well, we all
this.
have, yeah.
I think we've got a bit of egg on our face at the moment, to be honest.
I don't think we do because they were playing well, but
Yeah.
we said at the start of the year this side is no longer just Gary Ablett. Last 2 weeks have made us rethink that statement
Okay.
It's made everyone rethink that statement.
because their performance on Saturday night was just putrid.
Oh,
forget
14
that they're an expansion club.
Yeah.
It was the most insipid performance I've seen in a long
Well, I'll
time.
take
It was back to their 2010.
I'll take us back
11,
1 week first. Gary Ablett comes out of the side. We see them coming up against the Western Bulldogs after their most famous win ever. Against the Collingwood Magpies with no interchange, whatever. And then they lose to the Western Bulldogs quite convincingly. We sort of put that down to maybe they pushed themselves too hard the week before, the Bulldogs were ready to go the next week. But now 2 weeks in a row, that first quarter against Brisbane, they have been destroyed.
Well, their stats for the first quarter, Brisbane had 123 disposals, I think it was.
to 30, I think.
36.
Yep.
Had 3 inside 50 to 22.
Yep.
And about 25 marks, I think it was, to 1.
Yep. And it took them a while to get that mark.
Took them about 15,
that
20
mark,
minutes.
the commentators are starting to laugh about it. It was so ridiculous. Just think about how simple it is to chip it to a teammate to take a mark.
I mean,
There was 3 minutes to go in the quarter.
I reckon the chances of you just picking it up and bombing it, there'd be a decent chance your teammate would be under it. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give credit to Guy McKenna here because he came into the press conference and said, I've got nothing for that performance. You guys can write whatever you want because we deserve it.
Yeah.
Because that was just putrid because that performance was back to their first 2 years.
And they asked him in the press conference, what do you put it down to? And he said, well, I'm going to go ask the players because I've got no idea.
Yeah. I mean,
one thing I will say is that before everyone starts going, yep, they're awful without Ablett,
Yeah.
I had a good think about this to try and pinpoint the problem, and I think I found a solution.
Didn't strain yourself.
I did some, yep. So what I think is that Ablett, I still think the skills are there.
Absolutely.
You see guys like O'Meara, Bennell, they were playing well. When they had the ball, Gold Coast, they weren't that bad. You could see the skills on display. The problem was there wasn't much leadership.
Yeah.
And that's what Ablett offers. I think that it's more than just him having the ball.
When Gold Coast are down, you see that bald head bob up through a contest,
Yeah.
and it just sort of lifts the whole team.
and Riscatelli was out as well, so there's another senior player. And you look at that group on
They're still very young.
on Saturday night, there wasn't a lot of senior players in that side.
Oh, no.
I mean,
Well,
who was the most senior player?
even
in
if
that
you
side?
go-
I'm struggling. I think I want
even
to
if
be
you go
honest.
back a little, there's another player we need to roast in a second. We're on to that. But even if you go back a little bit further as far as leadership goes, they've lost Campbell Brown in the preseason, who they're expecting to have this season. They've planned this list, they've built this list with the expectation that they'll have a certain amount of senior players in each area of the ground to sort of lift everyone. And they're missing all of them this week.
What I would like to say about AFL is that there's a coach and then there's sort of like an on-field coach.
Yeah.
There's a guy on the ground that's, marshalling the troops and saying, do this, do that.
Yeah.
Luke Hodge is very, very good at it.
the best.
The best. And Gary Ablett is probably very, very good at it.
Yeah.
Probably equal best. And you're seeing the impact that that's having. We saw the impact it had on Hawthorn when Hodge wasn't playing. They struggled against Port Adelaide, and that's what I think is happening to Gold Coast now, except that they've got absolutely no one who's even remotely as experienced as
I think their most senior player was Danny Stanley, and he was their best player on
That's
the night.
nuts.
And that's no nonsense. That's nuts.
One specific player who I want to shine the blowtorch on a little, Zach Smith. I think it was Lewis Taylor. Gets it in the goal square. Zach Smith, he is a tall man. He's got ridiculously long arms. He could give him a hug from the distance he was away from Lewis Taylor.
Maybe you can put a photo of this one up as well.
Like he's watched the ball come.
Yeah.
Like Zach Smith probably could have spoiled that ball if he was trying hard enough. He sees Lewis Taylor get it. Lewis Taylor took about 3 steps in the time that Zach Smith was standing there with his hands on his hips. Like he accepted this
Didn't
small
move.
forward.
Didn't move.
Like he stopped. He didn't just he just came to a complete stop.
Wait, so what are you saying? The ball was in the air coming down for a mark to Lewis Taylor?
Lewis Taylor
It
and
was
Zach
a
Smith.
handball.
Oh, it was a handball.
Lewis Taylor and Zach Smith are running towards the goal square.
Yeah, and the handball's gone over the top.
They've both
obviously.
observed the handball come to Lewis Taylor. Lewis Taylor's got it. He's had time to swing around, put it on his boot. During that time, Zach Smith just sort of watched it happen.
That's a coach killer.
He was from me to Justin away.
You talk about pressure acts. That was the furthest thing on Zach Smith's mind. He
I
was
tell you
thinking
what-
about the next ruck contest. By the time
We
Lewis
talk
Taylor
about
got
coach killers. That would have had Guy McKenna jumping out of the coach's
yeah.
box, body slamming Smith in the
Zach
middle
Smith's
of
got a fair bit of explaining to do in the team review that would have happened today, but he did come off with an injured ankle, so I'm
I don't care
a
how injured
little
he
bit of
was.
slack, but still not good enough.
He could have done his ACL. He still could have flowered an arm in his direction or
tell
something.
you what.
Yeah, agree.
Oh,
All right,
terrible.
boys, our last topic, just quickly, we've had a retiree today in
Is it
Jake,
Zach Smith?
the push-up king. He's written him off after one incident.
He's a good player, Zach Smith.
It was a
He's
coach
a talented young lad.
Anyway,
Jake
but
the push-up king.
Jake, the push-up king, has retired
He
today.
won't be
after-
doing push-ups anymore. Well, he might be, but not in the AFL context anyway.
No. But 107 games for the Tigers. Only managed to 2 this year due to injury. But he retires today on 107 games. Well, it wasn't the greatest player with the greatest skills.
He was certainly a character.
He certainly was. Not blessed with a whole lot of pace. He had a little bit, but not a lot of pace. But
Well, not really blessed with a whole lot of anything, to be
I'm
honest.
starting to wonder, why was he on the list?
no, but the thing is, he had a crack 10 times out of 10.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And players get games on that merit.
He was a very imposing figure.
He was one of those
running
players
at you for the tackle.
He was one of the kind of players that you wouldn't look at and be like, he's a good kick or he's a good, whatever. But the one thing that always stood out about him was he would just go in and like he
for
would not give up.
a guy his size, he just had a crack and
He did.
He got the best out of himself.
He
That's
did.
what he did.
He knew what his strengths were. He knew what his limitations were.
Yeah.
And he squeezed 107 games out of himself with injury.
Yep.
And that's a lot of games, to be honest. That's nothing to be, to laugh at. 107 games is a very solid effort.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, congrats, Jake. You can hang out with whoever you want now.
We will leave it at that.
Yeah.
That brings us to the end of another show
Finally.
of news and views on Beyond the Boundary.
Another exciting,
Absolutely.
thrilling show of it.
Yeah, it was. It was a good discussion. Plenty to talk about. We'll touch on Vickery and Cox again next week, just quickly, once he gets his suspension, eventual suspension.
Yep. Now, make sure, we record this on a Monday night.
Next week.
Sure next Sunday night, tweet us in ideas of what you think we should discuss, the biggest topics of the week you think we should argue about.
We'll send a tweet out.
Josh and I are bound to disagree on them, so, tweet us in. We'll give you a shout out in the bottom right-hand corner.
It'd be a boring show if we didn't.
Twitter handle. It probably would be.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, boys.
Twitter handles. Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
And there we go.